Good morning to everybody. His Excellency Ambassador Lauder, His Eminency Cardinal Koch, dear Presidents, distinguished rabbis, honorable guests, and members of the World Jewish Congress Executive Committee. Italian Judaism crosses the doorway of this hall together with a representative of numerous countries. And today we are here with a large and important representation of Judaism at an international level. For our 2000s of year history in Rome and in every other locality of Italian Jewish communities, the majestic walls of the Vatican City have always had a meaning of insurmountable limit. That physical limit that was substantially theological, ideological, of substitution and thus supremacy. Closure, prejudice, persecution, accusations, forced conversions, silence. And I wonder, from 65 to today, November 22nd, how much efforts have been made to say, to communicate, to convince that these walls can instead represent solidity and protection, translating closer into defense, persecution into recognition, silence into words of dialogue. Cum nimis absurdum, with the visits to the great temple, altering the crusades of Jerusalem to the visited one, with the humble prayer at the Kotel. It is not easy to point on the timeline of the past that this is beyond us, from the lasting past that is still present. We acknowledge this and participate today in numerous meetings, studies, and comparisons. And today we can affirm that there is a bond, our bond. The significance of this moment of encounter is very high, and indeed an historic one. It is held between summits in a place that represents the heart of the Catholic faith. We have expressed, you have expressed, words of attention, respect, and trust, words of responsibility and maturity. We have sown, once again, the wheat field that nourishes hope. But I ask myself, what happens outside, in every other house, in every other day of the calendar, among faithfuls who live unaware of each other without any intention of meeting? The bond that we affirm and intend to strengthen through interpretation, encycles, speeches, and religious dialogue, how does it work? Is it enough? The leaders certainly have a responsibility of a relationship and to give example in person, of recognition and legitimation, but it is still not sufficient. It must reach the periphery of homes, parishes, days that are not of formal celebrations, peripheries of heart. And the relationship, our Kishreinu, our bond, precisely because it is a responsible one, must be also sincere, not fearful or reverent, but sincere in representing what is still out of tune, still misaligned with the statements that risk to undermine the past that started with so much commitment and courage, and of which we certainly acknowledge. We live in times of great uncertainty, pain, and war. We look up every day to the Creator and say, Me'ayin yavo ezri, where will help come from? With confidence, but at the same time, lowering our hands with the despair and sense of powerlessness in the face of the new war, social devastation, poverty, and misery. It is not enough to say no war, or to put the belligerent parties on an equal footing in responsibility for the conflict and therefore for the resolution. Our religious conscience must guide us, first of all, to distance ourselves from every abuse of religion and from every incitement in the name of God and the divine will to violence and hatred. This used to happen, but it still happens. Today, now, in addition to caring for our communities, supporting spiritual needs and social fragility, activities that require tireless commitment, we all need to act together and collaboratively, regardless of whether we are a religious majority or minority. Putting together that heritage of religious values to support civil needs and the emergencies of humans that live next to us, address with religious forces the non-religious situations, loneliness and isolation of young people, violence against women, the lacerating dilemma of hospitality and repatriation. What does it mean in these cases to act according to the law, act according to treaties? Let us remember, first of all, the divine law and the imperative of life. 84 years ago, the decree laws for the protection of the purity of the Italian race were published, isolating and excluding Jews from every sphere of life and removing them, again, from those rights so hardly conquered and granted by the Albertine Statutes and with the Risorgimento. Anticipated by a very precise propaganda, the fascist regime has thus legalized persecution, then deportation, extermination, that in a few years would have followed and make Italy dark together with the whole Europe. The imperative of remembrance of the Shoah and every persecution experienced in the millennia of the history is clear to us, but it is equally clear that it is not addressed only to us. To all Italians, EU and international institutions are called to act together, to network, to make known that it has happened, to assume today responsibilities, aware of the past one. The Catholic Church is also called to action, to which our claim to consistency is likewise addressed. Understanding the Shoah is perhaps impossible, but understanding the facts, or rather knowing them, as Primo Levi teaches us, is essential if we want to adhere to the imperative of memory. The opening of the Vatican archives generated an expectation of knowledge, and a phase of study and research began. Perhaps it's too early to draw authoritative conclusions, but the millennium pain awaits answers. And the imperative of Zachor is not memory for its own sake or lucid knowledge of the past, but it is also the investigation and action on the present with respect to growing anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism that, by sucking the poison from deep roots, is transformed and reinvented, grafts on new weaknesses and fragilities, transversal from the right to the left parties, preserves and reproposes religious prejudice, distorts Israel, and sends illusion of safety by renouncing to development and common growth. The relation and enhancement of a long-standing bond is a challenge also for the Jewish community that needs to find courage and trust to learn about the Catholic culture, read its books, language, to better understand the meaningfulness of the changes reached or proposed. It is not easy, and often the defensive approach prevails as centuries of prevarication are hard to be eluded. It is a challenge, and we need to be guided by those who are knowledge to do that. And if today the Catholic Church were to announce the adoption of the definition of IRA, I would be really happy. It would be a gesture. No, it would be an extraordinary act of far-right awareness of one's authority, responsibility, and ability to turn the wheel of anti-Semitic hatred in the opposite direction. I share my daydream, remembering with sorrow the 40 years of the attack on the Great Temple in Rome, remembering the lives taken away every day from their future in the name of revenge of ethnic or religious hatred. Coexisted could be so obvious and simple, yet is so far from being their life. I dream, and even maybe more intensively because we are approaching Hanukkah and Christmas, two holidays so awaited to see us gathered in prayers and family, that every holy place, synagogue, church, mosque, temple, becomes a place of serene prayer and never of massacre and terror. That my Jerusalem is that place of pilgrims and life narrated by the prophets, not the one where an act of prayer were to be considered a threat to life and freedom to others. We are here to affirm that the bond is a bond of life, of living communities, with thousands of years to be used as experience for our young generation. Thank you.